And welcome back to another edition of No Hold'em Back, our hockey edition. Fred Pletsch on the bottom of the screen. Fred, how are you?
Good. Just waiting to hear some more stories.
I know, man. We're just sitting around talking hockey during all this quarantine stuff. I'm making TV in my living room. It's great. And the man on the left, he's got one of these too, a Stanley Cup ring with the Blackhawks. I guess it's Blackhawk Day, right? Fred, Mike Haviland. Javi, how are you?
I'm well. How are you guys?
Good, man. Good to see you, and great to catch up, man. It's always fun talking with you. And so where are you? You in Colorado? Where are you at?
I am in Colorado. Been like everybody else on lockdown here for the last 5-6 weeks, and just working out of the house every day, and the new way of life, right?
Yeah, pretty much. And I was talking to our friend Scott Sandelin, who said to say hi last night. And he reminded me that this is normally the time you guys would be in Florida.
Yeah, we would be. That's a dangerous thing for Sandy and I together.
I heard a little bit about that golfing.
Yeah, it's been great. Obviously, I never really went to the coaches convention before I got into the college game, and then the first year Sandy and I hit it off, and it's become a real pretty. Great friendship here for the last 6-7 years, and certainly got a ton of respect for him, what he does, but really enjoy our friendship and enjoy going down there and spending some hours with him there.
Yeah,
you got to watch the Naples Beach Club golf course, Benny. Like that one par 4 right along the road. I think if you slice it, you're slicing it right into the Mercedes dealership.
Have you done that, Mike, or not?
I have not done that much. We have not played that course yet, but we have a NCHD golf outing, which I think is outstanding, and Josh and the staff's put it together. I know, Ben, you've kind of come out with us, but I think it gets to see, we're so intense and trying to beat each other all year, and to kind of get out and relax and and play with around the golf with each other and tell stories and laugh. And it gets competitive as usual, because that's what we all are. But certainly it's a fun time to be around everybody and kind of get us all in a different light.
Yeah. Well, before we dive into kind of a retrospective is kind of what we're doing here. We said talking hockey and, telling stories. And I know you got a boatload. And but I just wanted, if I may, just, the season. And I had Chris Wilkie on here the other day. So Wilk was on with me and kind of told his story. I thought it was one of the more unique ones, certainly from a player standpoint, in all of college hockey. And, that moment, that must have been one of the harder moments you had to go through as a coach, I would think, when you told everybody on that bus.
Yeah, I think it was kind of, surreal. You just, you're going up and you're that. The playoffs, you always have high hopes. I know we were going in to play number 1 North Dakota and in their building, which is a tough challenge for anybody. But when we got the call, we were about a little over 2 hours into the trip up on the bus, and you just feel bad. I mean, obviously for the entire team and the staff, but really those seniors to end their career that way, is something that obviously nobody's ever going to forget. But for them, to not have a chance to go out and maybe have a say in a matter is something that I've never experienced. And it was really, I think everybody was in shock on that bus. And we thought maybe just playing without the fans was going to be different. But, certainly this thing has gotten obviously bigger than in any game in this world. And you certainly understand it. But you felt really bad for the entire team, but for those seniors for sure.
Yeah. Freddie?
Well, Mike, there's probably no greater learning on the job experience maybe than the East Coast Hockey League. So as a coach, walk me back to your first head coaching job with the Atlantic City Boardwalk Bullies. As I do a little research, it shows lost in round 4, which means there were 5 rounds.
Wow. I didn't know that.
Playoffs. I mean, that's crazy. Walk us through your first season.
Yeah, I don't know if that might be a mistake. It was the conference finals we lost in, so round 3. Yeah, it was just, there was a team in Birmingham, Alabama that went under, and the owners bought it and moved it to Atlantic City. And I had been in Trenton the previous 3 years, one as a scout. That we were building we were a new upstart team in the East Coast Hockey, new franchise, and got a job with, basically I was still coaching youth hockey, and I was scouting for them, because it's a lot of recruiting. And I was coaching a tier one team, kind of a U16 team now it would be called. It was a midget team back then, but we did a lot of traveling up in the Boston and upstate New York area. And I would go to a lot of like ECAC games, Hockey East games, and was just kind of doing recruiting for them. Then I worked under Bruce Cassidy, my first job in the East Coast Hockey League. He was the head coach then. And then Troy Ward came in. I worked under him, and then got my first job in Atlantic City. And, I'm pretty fortunate enough as a Jersey guy to be staying coaching pro hockey. And my first two jobs were right in the state. That usually doesn't happen. And that first year was kind of something special. We took over that Birmingham team that went defunct. And, I think they only won like 14 or 15 games. So I had to kind of get through the team and figure out, didn't know a lot of guys. They were in the Southern Division. I was in the Northern Division, how to figure out, who to keep, who not to keep, kind of signed some guys, and brought some guys from Trenton with me that were free agents that year that weren't on the protected list. And we just kind of got off to a great start, and, had some ups and downs, like anybody does in pro hockey, through the dog days. And then kind of hit it there in the playoffs, and, went to the conference finals in our first year and lost to Dayton. Greg Ireland was the coach in Dayton Bombers. And, they went on to not win lost in the finals. So it was obviously a remarkable first year, and, something that kind of kickstarted that, and, the year before that, I had been to the finals with Trenton as an assistant and lost to South Carolina, and Rick Aduno was the coach, and Jared Bednar was a player back then. And I could go through a couple of guys, I was a CC guy on that team that beat us in game 6. But I think the learning experience for me, I had been to the conference finals, and then, my first 2 years in Trenton, and then to get to the conference finals that first year. And then the next year in Atlantic City, we won it. I think that prepared me. I think you always got to go through those, maybe losing, to understand what it's going to take to win and get over that hump. And I think certainly that I think those first 3 years in the East Coast League helped me, maybe get to that next year, that fourth year, to win it.
I want to ask you about one of the guys on that team who we lost too soon, Scott Matska, who played on Michigan's 1998 national championship team, suffered from ALS. What type of a player in person was Scott?
Again, I agree. We lost him way too early, and Scotty, Lee Mendelson was my assistant coach at the time there, and Scott, he had him in Omaha in the USHL, and the connection started there. We got Scotty out of Michigan when he didn't make an American League team, and Scotty could skate. He could skate. He could shoot it. He gave us that speed from the wing. He was ultra competitive, and a guy that, just kind of fit right in from day one. And he was guys loved him on the team. Scotty and I joked about it years later when I got this job. When I went back to Western Michigan, he lived in Kalamazoo, brought his kids over, and certainly it was really obviously unfortunate. He told me prior to it coming out that he had the disease, and pretty emotional time in Kalamazoo, him and I having a couple of beers, and and then it kind of went downhill for him there. But we talked about, it was a funny story. Scotty held me to my guns in the East Coast Hockey League. You always say to guys, because they don't make a lot of money, hey, if guys go up to the American League, I'll bump you in salary, and you can do that, and you have to do a whole new contract. And I remember, I think it was Kevin Colley and Luke Curtin had gone up to the American League, and he came in the next day and was knocking on my door saying, hey, you owe me $25 on my contract for the week. And we joked about it, 10 years later, but certainly was a really, really good player, but a better human being. And certainly we're all at a loss, today.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Did you have Brian Fahey by chance?
I did. I had Brian Fahey.
I was with him. I was with him in Lake Erie, so I knew Fahey pretty well.
Yeah,
What do
yeah.
you
I
remember
think
about
they
him?
called him the Duke or something. Wasn't his nickname the Duke or the
Yeah,
King or something? I think.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So you do well there, and then you go to Trenton for a year, and then you get the opportunity. You and I've talked about this a lot, and I know Fred will want to hear. You know, we're looking for those stories like you're sharing, which are awesome. And how did the opportunity in Norfolk to go up to the American League level? How'd that come about for you, Mike?
Well, I just think, obviously I left Atlantic City and then went back to Trent, like you said, and we
Yeah.
were fortunate enough to win it that year. And I think, again, I didn't play 10 years in the NHL, and it's hard. It's hard to move up. And I think when you win, I think it opens up doors. And to win the championship 2 out of 3 years in the East Coast Hockey League opened some doors. I got an interview with the Blackhawks and flew out, and in the room was Dale Talon, Al McIsaac, and Stan Bowman at the time, and interviewed in Chicago, and they offered me the job right on the spot there in Chicago at the United Center at the offices, and I accepted right on the spot. I don't think there was much. You get a chance to move up to the American League and the second best league in the world, and and it was certainly a special time for me, and all the hard work you put in and coaching, and you want to keep moving up in the ranks. And it was certainly a special day. And I think Chicago was, at that kind of cusp where they had been down and out a little bit. And, and I think they had a plan, and I was pretty fortunate enough to take over that Norfolk team. And certainly I'm sure we want to talk about some of those guys I had early on in my career.
Yeah. Well, talk to us first about the adjustment from, we always hear it in whatever sport it is, high school, college, whatever it is. And, the minors, the speed's the issue. What was it for you with the first year adjustments in terms of being the head coach?
Well, I think hockey's hockey for me. I think the systems and it's your relationship with your players and them buying into everything that you're kind of, putting out there as your structure, your culture, everything. And I think, I went in with a plan, and obviously you got to, at the American League level, you got to take a lot of the systems from the NHL guy. And I understand that. And you're there to develop. I think you're dealing with a player now that from the East Coast Hockey League, those guys always wanted to get to the American League. Now you're dealing with guys that are making, at that point when I was in the American League, the first time was $50,000 a year on their entry level contracts, and all of a sudden they could jump to 800, and they're in the NHL, and they look at the money, but they also look at being in the NHL is where they want to be, and I think you're a different athlete at that level with that when it comes to that, and I think those guys were so focused in on, how do you get me to the NHL? How do I make it? And what do I have to do to get to the NHL? And so the speed was quicker, obviously, but certainly not much, as a coach structurally did I change or how I ran the team or personality wise. I'm a big believer in communicating and talking to you guys. And I think you get the best out of people when you treat them like people. And I think that was the big thing for me.
Ben, you probably saw this too. When I was in the American League, guys would get called up, and most often it would be, hey, his teammates felt great for him, way to go, you deserve it. But once in a while there would be, what? Guy's going up?
Oh, yeah.
Hey, it wasn't once in a while. That was a lot of times for the coach. I can tell you.
Did it vary by organization? Like when there was a need with the big club, the input that you gave them. Walk us through kind of the guy maybe the general manager wanted because he was a high draft pick versus you saying, well, this guy deserves a shot for whatever reasons.
Yeah, I think sometimes you were in those conversations, sometimes you weren't. I think they had their guys, and listen, I think I had a ton of respect. I mean, Rick Dudley was our assistant GM, and Dale Talon and Stan Bowman at the time when I first got there, and and Al McIsaac. They had a ton of respect for those guys. They're hockey guys. They understood. They wanted to see certain people, and I think as a coach, you respect that. If they asked for your opinion, you gave your opinion, and you said this guy's playing this way. He may deserve a chance, and because you're always trying to stick up for your players and help your players along that deserve it and earned it. And I think that was always my thing. And if I got asked, I told them. Some days I didn't get asked, and the guy went up, and that's when you had the knock at the door of the other guys saying, "Hey, coach, I thought I was playing pretty good," and I think that's part of being an American Hockey League coach. I think you got to deal with that, and then you got to deal with them when they come back down and they think they played well up there, and a lot of it times it's just a contract with the way it was written, or hey, listen, a guy's on a one-way, they're not going to send him back, and you're on a two-way. So there's a lot of that, and a lot of it's a mental side of the game, certainly, that you have to deal with at that level.
And now it might be a little different too, because every game they play in the American League or the East Coast League, everybody can see it, right?
Yeah.
Today's age.
Yeah, it's true. It was always, I go back. I remember a time I had Chris Versteeg, and he was playing extremely well, and he went up and he came back, and he went up and he came back, and then he was like, "I don't understand," and he's like, "I only play like," and I said, "Listen, you got to earn that trust now from them," and I think that was the big thing that players, had to really understand, that maybe you're a first line guy in the American League or a point guy from the Western Hockey League, and then all of a sudden now you're a third, fourth line guy, and Ben and I always talked about this. You never lose. I call it clubs in your bag. You got those clubs in your bag, and I think, it's learning how to be that a guy that NHL coach can trust in the structure and the system, and then eventually you don't lose those clubs. Those clubs will always come back. You just got to prove to them that you could play at that level, and then that gets you more ice time and more of the power play, or being on top in the top six maybe.
I love the golf analogy. It either comes back to golf or Seinfeld for me, no matter what it is. Some of the notable guys that played there: Troy Brouwer, Dustin Byfuglien, you had Corey Crawford, Duncan Keith. I mean, talk to us about some of the guys that you helped develop to start that great run the Hawks had.
Yeah, it was really special. I think I was fortunate enough to be, they drafted extremely well, and I think Buff was a 7th or 8th rounder, and I think Browsey was a pretty high pick too, and then you had Crawford was a low pick, and Joel Merson, and I even think like Colin Frazier, and Seabrook. These guys were, I didn't have CG and Dunks, but I had Byfuglien and Burish and Fraz and Versteeg we traded for. But it was a special time for us, and I kind of, as the coach of the team, you knew it was kind of coming. We had been winning in the 40s, and we even got into the 50s one year, 51 or 2 games we won in the American League, and but you could see the skill set of them, and the depth that we had from the drafts that the Hawks had done, and it was just a matter of them understanding where they were going to fit in the NHL level. And I know we always laugh about it now with Buff, but Buff, he would sometimes they want to move him up front, and we always had him on the back end, and he'd come to me at times and say, "Javi, I don't want to play up front. It's a lot of work back checking." and I like being on the back end, and it certainly worked out pretty well for him in his career. But they were a special group, and it was really such a special bond that I had with them. And there was 10 of them and myself that moved up, and then we went on to win the cup. And I got to see Colin Frazier a couple months ago now, and he's a scout now for the Hawks, and he was in Plymouth, Michigan, for that what's that game they have there for the U.S. national thing, and it was like it was all the NHL GMs and coaches are there, and I mean, scouts.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, and the prospect game there, and Colin Frazier was there. I hadn't seen him in years, and we had a big hug, and we talked for 50 minutes, and it was like we hadn't left each other, telling stories and everything. So some stories I don't even remember, but it was just a special group, and then to go on and win a Stanley Cup with them was even that extra little special thing there, maybe like a proud moment of like a dad and a coach, because you're in the American League with them on the bus an awful lot of times, and to see them develop and what they did, as men was really special.
I want to ask you one thing. I want to follow up about Burrish because I had a chance to do a few of his games in college. Fred, you might have too. The year they won the national title, I was working for Comcast then, so we did remember the college hockey showcase, Freddie? Oh, they did that. So they come to state, they play at state, they go down to Yost, play Michigan. We interviewed him both nights, man. I don't know that I've talked to a guy, and I've talked to a lot, as we all have, but that guy was a character. What was he like to coach?
He was the same way. I think he was a lot of the glue to the team. Everybody loved him. He was a character. He was, Burr gave you everything he got every shift, every time he stepped on the ice. And, he was the ultimate team guy for me. And, I look back even, in the American League, he was, he did everything he had to do to try to get to the NHL, and great penalty killer. I put him in the middle at times. He was great in the circle at times. And, he fought, he did everything he could do to try to get up there, and he certainly did it. He went on and had a great career. And, but Burr was a guy for me that, even from the early in Chicago, Norfolk, and then in Chicago, that the guys gravitated towards. I think he was just a winner, and he understood what it took to win, and he understood his role and at that level, and certainly was a big part of the reason why we won.
Yeah, really those old soul types. And Ben, I've told this story before. 2006, Cornell and Wisconsin at the time was like the third longest game in NCAA history for the right to go to the Frozen Four, triple overtime. And Cornell had told their goalie, David McKee, don't play the puck. They dump it in, set it behind the net, get out of there. Well, 5 minutes to go in the third overtime. The goalie comes out, rims it around the boards, and there's Jack Skilly, picks it off, no look backhand in the slot, bang, game over, 1-0. So that's another guy you had too, Jack Skilly, right?
Yeah, I did have skills, and I think you go back to what you said about Burrs. I think he is one of those throwback players, and as coaches, you love those guys that can put them in all different roles and accepted it, and I think you win with those guys when you have. You need a few of those guys to win with, and certainly Burr was one of them. And Jack was a great player, and I think Jack's still maybe playing overseas. I think he had another guy who had a good run, and certainly a skilled guy, could skate and shoot it. One of the quicker guys I ever had in my career.
Yeah, still playing in Germany.
Yeah, I was going to say I thought he was. So
I want to go back to Bufflin if I can. So. Did you just green light him all the time? Did it all start with you or what?
I don't know. Buff came in pretty good. He was coming from Prince George. And, I tell this story, you guys will probably laugh, and, not many people at the arena would have seen it, but I don't know how many games we were in Norfolk, and Buff would take the puck. He could go end to end in the American League. And obviously you saw it in the NHL, he could do it. And at times you'd have to kind of bring him in and show him video and just be like, hey, he's down below the goal line in the offensive end, bumping into my forwards. And guys are like, so you just got to tell guys, you got to cover for him when Buff goes. But you certainly wanted to have the green light to go. And he was very good at it. But there was one time we were playing Bridgeport, I'll never forget, in Norfolk. And he took the puck end to end, and he cut in to go to the net. And Buff, obviously a big, strong guy. He blew right out of his skate. His foot came right out of the skate and was dangling, and he just went right off to the locker room. And I had never seen anything like that in my life. And the guys on the bench were like, did that just happen? He blew through the skate. But Dustin Bufflin was one of the most skilled players I ever coached. And I think he was such a strong man. When you bumped into Buff, like, you knew you were he's a big, thick guy, but he had his speed was kind of more deceiving than I think people even knew, and his skill set, I believe, was off the chart. His vision, and so obviously he's went on to had a great career. So
easy going type. There's so much conjecture about whether he was going to come back and play in Winnipeg or try and force a trade or whatever. And I talked to somebody at that time who knew him well, and they said, well, maybe Big Buff's primary concerns are always, is his new boat going to be coming in on time? And does he have a few tins of cha ready to go? So
yeah.
that was kind of him.
Big fisherman, and he loves his time to go fishing. And, he just that, yeah, that's him totally. That's Buff. He was this laid back guy, but ultra competitive. And, and I think of, I always go, that playoff run we had, he was fantastic against Luongo in that Vancouver series. I don't think he was well liked there at all in that series, but he was outstanding for us in that run, and certainly enjoyed my time thoroughly on and off the ice with Big Buff.
Yeah, he was fun to watch, man. No doubt about it. So take us back to the moment, Mike, where you told us the story earlier, how you go to the United Center, you get hired to coach the team in the American League, which included a stop in Rockford for 1 year. I think we missed each other by 1 year.
Yeah.
So what was the moment like when you got the opportunity and the call and the opportunity you got the call up?
Yeah. It was after the year in Rockford, and they made some changes in the coaching staff in Chicago, and Dale Talent called me and asked me if I would join the staff, and Dennis Savard and I talked for a long time. He was the head coach at the time, and Savvy and I got along really well, and Dennis and I talked about the responsibilities, where he saw me and on the staff, and obviously you're like anybody else. To get a chance to coach in the National Hockey League or be in the National Hockey League has always been your dream. And, I thought it was just the right fit for me, knowing the players, and being in an organization for 3 years. And I felt like I could help with that end of it, with the guys going up and with Dennis, and also be an impact to the staff. And it was awesome. It was a great, unbelievable feeling. Obviously you get choked up and because you dream as a player. I didn't get there, and then now you make it as another way as a coach, and I think it's that day you kind of look back of all the hard work and the sleeping in the office in the East Coast League, and the long bus rides, the 15-16 hour bus rides in the coast, and and you got to kind of pinch yourself a little bit, but then all of a sudden it's like, I got a job to do. I want to make sure I can stay, and because everybody knows how quick things happen up there.
Well, it's funny. We just finished talking to the guest before you, Mark Crawford, who had Joel Quenneville as his assistant / playing coach in St. John's, Newfoundland. So that would have been Joel's first coaching job. You wind up working with Joel when he was head coach of the Blackhawks during those great runs. And how much did you learn, or maybe, in some cases they're learning from you just about how to handle people and looking at things a different way? Because the best head coaches, obviously, they take suggestions and everything, they make the decision, but they don't want to hear their assistants just toe the party line. They want real input, and they want real suggestions, right?
Yeah, and I think every head coach wants that. I think you want the, not the yes guys. You want the guys to challenge you. You want the guys to, I think come in and prove to you why maybe we should do things through video, and certainly Joel was no different. I think I learned a ton. I think he is one of the best bench bosses I've ever been behind the bench with. I think his feel for the game, in the instance of a minute, and whether it's changing a line or coming back with a line, or his matchups, was outstanding. I think Joel was really good at that, of understanding who was going and who needed to get more ice, and or to switch that line at the key moment, or the D pair, or whatever it may be. I thought he was outstanding at it. And I think his relationship with his players and how he dealt with star players, for me, was outstanding. I think it was something that I needed to learn and see, in case, maybe that day, hopefully still will happen for me. But certainly that was certainly something that I think I needed to really see, from a guy who's played in that league, got a ton of respect from his players and how he dealt with his players. And I think the guys, as you can see, obviously he had a great run there in Chicago and in his career. He's a Hall of Fame coach for me. But I think you look at what guys say about him and how they enjoy playing for him. And that's what I think, I look back and I think about the time we had, how he dealt with people, his players, his staff, his is something special. And I think you take an awful lot out of that. I mean, the guy's great X's and O's too, but I think there's more to it. I think you got to look at that and you got to keep developing as a coach. And I certainly learned a lot from him.
So you finally get your hands on the cup, man. Walk us through the finals and all that and the highlights and then getting to touch that silver chalice we all dream about.
Yeah, Benny, it wasn't as easy as you think. I mean, we only played Philly once that year, and you get out of the Western Conference, which was really tough with San Jose and Vancouver at back then. And we get out, and we feel good about ourselves. And I got to tell you that Flyer team, if you look back on that roster, they were really good and they were deep, and they were going on all cylinders with Briere and Hartnell and Billy Leno and Pronger and it's crazy. They and we had only seen them the one game, and the first game of this series I think was 6-5 at home in a Stanley Cup first game. I think we got to see how good they really were because you can see it in film and watching. But I think that series was such a good series, and it was such a entertaining series. I think it was both teams look back. I think there was so much offense because both teams had it. And, but obviously I can tell you this, as a little kid, and you hate to do this as a coach, and, you're sitting on the bench and we're winning, we were up by a goal, and I remember kind of peeking out of the corner of my eye up out in Philadelphia in Game 6, and getting the clock kind of ticking down and going, I can't believe we're going to win the Stanley Cup. And I know you're not supposed to do it, but you kind of look at it and you're always looking at that clock going, we're 5 minutes away, we're 4 minutes away, and all of a sudden Philly ties it, and it's like, oh my God, we got to go to overtime. And now if we don't win in overtime, we got to go back for Game 7. Now anything can happen in Game 7. Yeah. Even though you love your team and you feel good about it, but, momentum is a huge part of it. And so all of a sudden you go in and, kind of go back to how good that team was and how good Joel Quenneville was, how fast we moved on from that, the ups and downs, the momentum swings in games in that type of a situation was amazing to see how our guys dealt with it. And the leadership in that room with Taser and Kane and Hossa and Dunks, and I can go down the list, Brian Campbell, Brett Sopel, Andrew Ladd, like they had moved on by the time we moved in there. When we came in to give our speech, and Joel kind of moved on, and it was just business as usual, and this is what we're going to do and how good it's going to feel to win. And it just kind of, it was great. And we went out believing, hey, we can win this thing. This is just what happens in this game. But that's how close we were. And then kind of go, oh my God, we may have to go to Game 7. I'm not going to lie to you. I was looking at that clock as it ticked down before they scored the goal. But then, Kaner, it went in, and I remember jumping on the bench up and down as probably one of the biggest calls or whatever, not call, but anticlimactic situation.
It was such a surprise.
Yeah, well, I think nobody knew. I was jumping up and down. I remember grabbing Q, and he was kind of holding me off like, oh, Happy, I don't know. And I was like, I just remember thinking, if Kaner thinks it's in, and that guy's one of the best players in the world, I would think it's in. So, that's how I was thinking about it. But, I think again, it's that time in your life where you dream about it. Playing on the ponds, playing in, road hockey. I left home at 15, went to Toronto and played junior hockey and graduated high school from there. And all the car rides with mom and dad and the early mornings and dreaming about it, playing rod hockey with my brothers and who wins the Stanley Cup and making fake Stanley Cups. And it was just something special. It really was. And I get choked up now thinking about it. You know, when you, all the hard work but to have your name put on that cup is every kid's dream, and every player, I don't care who you are, if you're involved in hockey, it's your dream. And I actually think my name is on it is still crazy to me to this day.
Well, how did that come about? Going to Toronto when you were 15, who'd you play with? Who'd you stay with? High school, all that stuff. And that's quite a leap at that time to do that.
Yeah, it was, you know, early 80s. And I had gotten, we went up for a tournament in Hamilton, Ontario. And the OHL contacted right away as I walked off the ice. They were like, you know, I wasn't the best skater, but I could score. And they came right up. I was a tall, lanky kid, you know, at 15, and I'll never forget. They came up to my dad and I, and they were like, you know, you're going to get drafted in the OHL. We want you to come, blah, blah, blah. And we had no idea, you know, my dad's a New York City guy. I was born in Manhattan, and, you know, we played roller hockey when I was a kid, and you know, ice was very scarce in Jersey at that time in the 70s, the whole era of the 70s. And, you know, I think, you know, so I get recruited, and then next thing you know, you know, we got a call from Marshall Johnson from the New Jersey Devils, and they had just moved to New Jersey at the time. And Marshall was like, you know, we know about your son, and you know, we want to help out, and maybe it's the time to move out of New Jersey to get him more exposure. And it was kind of crazy, you know, and things happened so quick. And next thing you know, I was in Oakville, Ontario, and you know, my mom wasn't too happy about it. I was the only American in the whole entire league, in the Central Junior B League at the time, and obviously the only guy on the team from the U.S. And some hard times early on, and I think you know, I think I remember not playing for about 3 weeks, and I was living with the owner at the time, and guys were coming after me in practice, and because I was taking somebody's job, and that was the difference from the U.S. for me that I learned. You know, all of a sudden this was a job to those guys there playing junior hockey, and like I was playing youth hockey, midget hockey, like it wasn't really as intense as it is in Canada, and I got to learn that firsthand. And I think, but I stuck it out, and I never forget my dad. I remember calling and took the cord out of the kitchen from the phone line and was talking to him one night, and I was kind of complaining about, you know, not playing, and did we make the right choice? And you know, guys are coming after me, this and that. And my dad's an old school guy, and you know, and he's watches still every game of mine now and critiques my coaching and everything. And you know, and he just said, hey, listen, you know what? You made a commitment, Mike. This is what we're doing. You know, you're staying. And he hung up the phone on me. And it may sound harsh to people, but I got to tell you, it was the best decision I ever made. And a couple of weeks later, I had a guy got injured. I got in, and I ended up playing with a guy who went on, my line mates for the first 2 years there were Ron Hoover, that went to Western Michigan, and Mike Peltier, God rest his soul, passed away in 9/11, was on one of the planes, and he went to St. Lawrence. And but Hoovie went on to play for the Bruins and the Blues, and you know, had a pretty good career at Western there. So we had some good teams, and it was one of the best experiences I ever had in my life. Graduated high school in Toronto, went to grade 13, and then went to Elmira College after that and played there.
See, another grade 13 graduate like me, Benny.
Yeah.
Abby, before we let you go, I want to ask you to, you know, about what's going on with your current program with Colorado College. And, you know, for whatever it's worth, the last Frozen Face-Off, your team was in it. So, you know, that's something. I know it's not what you wanted, but nevertheless, tell everybody about what's going on with your program. You got the new arena going. I know there's a lot of energy around your program. I want to give you a chance to do that before we stay so long.
Well, I appreciate it, Benny. I think obviously a brand new rink coming in. It's you know, the foundation's being poured. They're still working through this epidemic right now, which is outstanding to see. And you know, so one more year at the Broadmoor World Arena, and then we'll be in our new arena right on campus, and you know, state-of-the-art facility. I think you know, to have our own home, the guys can walk across the street, and I think it's just going to be outstanding. It's going to be a great atmosphere. listen, I last year wasn't the year we wanted. Didn't really we wanted to finish. As you know, Ben, you call this conference. It is amazing, and it is hard, and it is tough, and you know, and I think you look at it, and you know, it doesn't matter who you play up and down that conference. You better be ready. And you know, certainly I like our recruiting. You know, we just got ranked 5th in the recruiting class in the country. My guys have done a good job, and it's obviously I like the way the program's going and the recruits we got coming. We're going to be young next year. The last 2 years we've lost 10, 11 guys each year because we kind of had to change that years ago when I got here, and that's what happens now. You're in that cycle of a young team again. So but I like the group, I like the makeup, I like where the program's going, and I, you know, obviously a lot of excitement around the building, and you know, you always want to get better every year, and that's always the plan, is to make your players better throughout the year, and be the best you can be each and every day.
Good stuff. Well, I enjoyed it. I always enjoy talking with you. The last time we were out there, I think I was in your office for an hour and a half, man. So it's always fun, and we didn't get that deep as we did today. So I appreciate it, Fred. Last thing from you before we say so long to have you.
No, just hope the best for you, Mike, and hope that new rink's a game changer for you. It really should be.
Thank you, Freddie. I agree. I think it should be, but I appreciate it anytime, guys. And as you know, Benny, as you say, I love talking hockey, and you know, I'll come on anytime, obviously. But you know, I just enjoy it, and I think what you guys do is outstanding, and what you do for the game, and you know, I think the hockey world is a great world, and it's such a great, tight knit community, and you know, I just love being a part of it.
Well, maybe what one idea, real quick, and throw this out to you two. Maybe we do like a coach's corner.
I would love that. I think it would be great. I don't think many guys will give you their systems and stuff, but I think if you tell stories.
I didn't mean so much that. I meant so much what we're doing.
Yeah, no, I think it'd be outstanding. I'd be up for it. I think you could get a lot of different characters on, and you know, guys that have different opinions. I think or you know, different views and different stories. I guarantee you'll see a lot of them come full circle, and they'll intertwine together.
Yeah. Everybody's got stories, some even true.
Yes.
On that note, Abby, thanks for doing this. We appreciate it. Stay safe. Best to you and your family and your team, and we'll be in touch.
Same to you guys.
All right. Mike Haviland, head coach of Colorado College, joining us to talk some hockey here on the No Holding Back edition of the Hockey Podcast. We'll talk to you next time. Stay safe and stay healthy.